Hi, thanks for tuning in to Simart Bike Parts. Over the next 3 riveting episodes, I'll be installing 3 products from a Canadian company called Admore lighting. And I will be installing a pannier lighting kit, a top case lighting kit and a brake light from them. Now in every case it's quite an invasive fit. What I mean by that is that you either have to drill parts of the bike and or pierce, not cut, pierce into existing wiring. So it's not for the faint-hearted at all. So I would strongly suggest you think very carefully before purchasing. And once you've purchased, you read the instructions, even if you don't follow them, because this is a job that you really want to get right first time. And the maxim of measure twice, cut once really applies. The first product I'm going to be installing is the pannier lighting kit. So without any further ado, let's crack on with that. Right, the first thing you have to do is to put the kettle on. The reason why you have to do this is that you need to sit down and read the instructions. Even if you don't use them, read the instructions. It's what I've done, and I'm going to use them as a guide for carrying out the work. Once you've done that, you can then start to consider whereabouts you're going to put the lights and, just as importantly, the cable routing. This will determine where you start to drill. Once again, measure twice, cut once. Right. Having had a cup of tea and read the instructions, you'll notice that they recommend that the lights are as far apart as possible. Kind of makes sense. So in this case, I will be placing my first light on the outer edge of my pannier. Now this is where you need to take a breath and really make sure that where you want the hole to be is really where you want the hole to be. So don't rush into it, take your time. Think about cable routing, and on that subject I'm going to mount my light so that the cable is at the bottom and it runs round the inside bottom of the pannier. To me this makes sense because it's unlikely to get caught by a pannier bag going in or out the pannier or any other piece of equipment. You can of course mount and route the cable around the top of the inside of the case. That's your choice, but personally my choice is to have it running around the bottom of the pannier itself. So I'm going to mark with a felt tip pen, make sure it's correct. I'm then going to pilot drill and open the hole up out to 6 millimeter in diameter, which is the diameter of the rubber sleeve on the light itself. So the rubber sleeve will protrude through the thin wall aluminium of the case itself. Right, the 6 millimeter hole is now drilled on the outside lower part of the pannier, and I'm now going to open the alcohol wipe and just wipe down where the adhesive is going to be applied. There we go. Give it a good clean. This will remove any thin traces of oil or grease or anything like that that might compromise the adhesion. Right, there we go. Taking time to give it a good clean. Make sure that it's evaporated off, so it's as clean as it can be. Remove the 3M backing tape. Here's one I didn't prepare earlier. Now I'm not going to measure perfectly to allow the light to run alongside it. I think in this case approximation by eye should do it, but if you've got a dicky eye, then by all means put a guiding line down the outside of the pannier to follow. So the rubber shoulder fits beautifully into the hole I've just drilled, remembering it's 6mm, and I'm now going to position the light by eye and then finish off with some pressure to keep it in place. Now this 3M adhesive tape is really good stuff. I use some industrial strength within the core business applications I do. However, it does say in the instructions, do not expose this to any rain for 24 hours. So I would take that good advice, because you put it on properly onto a clean surface and it's a really good strong bond. That's worked out pretty well. I've got the tail on the inside of the pannier. Next job is to look at routing the cables around the inside of the pannier to the socket. So the next job is to put the plug onto the tail, which has just come through the hole on the inside of the pannier. Now this could be a little bit fiddly, so make sure that you know which way it goes around, how it connects onto the next piece of wiring, and you ensure that the colour of the wires is exactly the same as the plug that it's going into. So at the top, or as you're looking at it far right, we've got black, then red in the middle, then yellow. So making sure that the black is in position along with the yellow and along with the red, like so. Black, red, yellow, another check, black, red, yellow. Insert, and the instructions say all at once, wires into the little plug. Yep, they've gone in pretty well. I can see the prongs there. And then, just to check it, fasten the two connectors together. And there we go. Job is a good one. So the next thing to do is to route the cable around the inside of the pannier, making sure that you place this where you want it on the outside of the pannier. Once again, it requires a hole drilling, marking out first and drilling, and then you can place this through, and the exterior plug and socket will connect to this every time you put your panniers on. So in this case, I've run the cable around the inside bottom of the pannier up to my desired plug socket there. Once again, I can't say this enough, measure twice, cut once. So I've drilled the hole using the drill that's provided, which opens it out to the size of the collar on the plug, and I've routed the cable as you can see. One point about this, the connector is sitting towards the bottom of the pannier. Now if your panniers leak, be aware of this. You might want to raise that connector up the side of the wall of the pannier, but bear in mind that it may catch things going in and out of the pannier. So it's a bit of a trade-off really. My panniers are quite good at the moment, so I think it'll be okay for now. So that's the pannier, one of the panniers wired up. The other pannier, of course, is a different shape internally. It hasn't got this part here, so we have to put some consideration to where exactly we're going to route that cable to. So, next pannier coming up shortly. So in this case, excuse the pun there, you'll see that there's no shoulder here inside this larger pannier. Now in this case, oh God, I've done it again, you could actually mount the socket towards the rear of the pannier if you should wish, because there's no hot exhaust just outside the pannier to affect or melt any cabling. What I will be doing is following a similar line to the other pannier by routing the cable along the bottom of the pannier, along and up to the socket on the front of the pannier itself. Now in this case, can't stop myself from saying it now, what I've done is I've mounted the little plug and socket just slightly higher than the bottom of this pannier, because a bit like me nowadays, this pannier has got a tendency to leak. So please fit the cable how you wish. There's no strict suggestion or anything in the instructions on how you lay the cable, but for me, following the bottom of the pannier makes sense, and I've raised the plug socket just in case it does leak, and I follow the cable all the way around to the socket there. There's no shelf to help us with positioning here, so it is out in the open wherever it might be. So once again, feel free to place that socket wherever you think it will fit best. Right, okay, we're now at the part where we're looking at the wiring on the bike itself. So a couple of things here. Do not attempt this with a hangover, and if you're not entirely sure about what you're doing, because CAN bus and wiring can be a very sensitive issue, then don't do it. Go and get yourself an electrician or a motorcycle mechanic to make the connections for you. I'll very shortly show you close-ups of what wire I'm attaching to what, but in the meantime, make sure you've got all the time in the world to do this, and you're not going to be disturbed or distracted, because I would strongly suggest full concentration, and also a multimeter is a very handy bit of kit to have, just to check that you're getting voltage where you need it and that everything's right and proper. Right, here we are at a close-up of the wiring. I've added some extra illumination so we can see what we're doing. Now, first off, let me identify this. This is the controller, which comes with a kit, of course, and we've got one cable going to one pannier, another cable going to another pannier, and the third cable, this one, which goes into the gubbins of the bike. Now, there's 5 wires to connect here, and they do send you something called posi taps. Now, these are little connectors. Let's see if you can make this out. There's a little connector which you unscrew. You place this over the cable you're connecting to. You put that on. The pin inside punches the cable, and then you add your wire through the top and then screw that down to make a good connection. So the wires are that you've got to connect is a red, a blue, a green, a yellow and a black. Now the red one goes to a switched positive 12 volt supply. Once again, if you're not too sure about what I'm talking about, then please go and seek an electrician or a motorcycle mechanic. Now in this case, to further confuse the matters, I'm using a Denali power hub. Now this is to allow me to fit further Admore products on as I carry on with the installation. But this is providing me with my positive 12 volt switch supply. If you haven't got one of these, then you're going to have to find one on the bike. And there is a handy one actually, which is located down here. And it's where there's a fuse carrier carrying 2 fuses, and there is a switched supply. So you can use a positive 12 volt switchable supply from here. You can actually see my yellow cable here, which runs up and goes into my
power hub. So the red cable, the 12 volt positive switch supply, is going into my power hub here. The next cable is next wire is a blue wire, and hopefully you can see it here. And using the posi-tap connector, I've gone and attached that to the signal wire on my rear brake light. The next one is the green wire, and that needs to go to the right turn indicator. And if you dig down into the inside of the bike, you'll find the indicator connector there. Hopefully you can see it there, and you can see the green connector, and I've attached it to the brown wire. In this case, it's the brown wire you want to attach it to. So the next wire is the yellow wire, and that goes to the left hand indicator, and you can see that I've attached it to the blue wire on the motorcycle wiring. And finally, the fifth cable is a black cable, which we can find there, and this is the ground or earth cable. Once again, I'm using my Denali power hub to provide this connection. However, you can go to any earth point on the bike you wish. And that's the connections. Please ignore that. That's my Denali CanSmart, which is fitted to the bike. So just to recap, 5 wires, 5 connections. Use the provided posi taps, and if you've got any further questions on this, then don't hesitate to call me. Once the wiring's done and before it's all put away neatly, we need to make sure that it works, and we test it, of course, and that's what we'll move on to next. So we're now at the testing stage. So before you tidy all the cables up and put everything back to normal, it's really good advice to test it first, because if there's something not quite working correctly, you can still access the wiring to make sure that you've made the right connection. So, turning the ignition on, we should see that both lights are illuminated red, for running lights I presume. Now what I have done in this case is that I've used a plate to obscure my Denali rear brake light, because it tends to be quite overwhelming when it's operated. So as a default position, we've got these running lights on the outside. If we now operate the front or back brake, we should see these work as brake lights. And yep, we can see that working. Let's test the back brake. Yep, that's working too. Now we're going to go and check that the indicators are working. First of all, we'll indicate left. Yep, and we can see the indicators working fine there. Yep, that's working fine there. And finally, let's check the 4 ways, and we can see that's working too. So, test is good. You'll notice that the running lights will stay on for a little while until the CAN bus fully shuts down. It's only about 1 or 2 minutes, I'm not too sure. But that's the test completed. I would now be able to tidy up all the wiring, put it away, make sure it's not being pulled or anything like that, and it's sitting naturally in that compartment underneath the seat. So, finally, and to summarise, it's a good bit of kit, I wouldn't say otherwise. You have to be really committed to make sure that you want to fit it, because there's 2 areas of concern here. There's the drilling the panniers, which isn't everybody's bag, so think carefully before you purchase the kit. And there's also the connection to the CAN bus wiring, which isn't for the faint-hearted, and you've got to really know what you're doing or get somebody else to do it for you. So yeah, that's it. My next video will be about fitting the brake light, the Admore brake light, and hopefully see you soon for that. In the meantime, thanks for watching, bye for now, and ride safe.